Hi friends, I'm Abby and welcome back to my channel. Today I'm going to be talking about and gushing about my favourite books of 2023. So a little bit delayed as we're now a good way, well not a good way, but a little bit of a way into 2024, but I'm here, I have thought about it, I have reflected on 2023 and all of the books that I read, all the 86 books that I read last year, and I've come up with a top 10, a nice round number. And I actually struggled a little bit because I feel as though I read some really good books last year. I had a really good reading year. I've had a large number of 4.5 stars or really high ratings, and books that have stuck with me and books that I feel like I am passionate about them. And I haven't had that for a couple of years, I don't think. Like 2022, I think I struggled to come up with a top 10. So it's great to have had such a positive reading year and a year where I had so many new favourites and books that I am very happy to gush about. So hopefully I can try and channel that same energy into 2024 and keep up the momentum of reading books that I love and reading favourites and picking books that that are appealing to me, because that energy that I had in 2023, I want to keep it. So I do actually as well have some honorary mentions that I had my top 10 and I was like, I feel as though there are a few books that I want to mention that don't fit into this top 10, that they're not a favourite, but I do think they were really good, and it feels a bit remiss not to mention them because of how much I enjoyed them despite them not being in the top 10. So it shows how good the year was. So I'm going to run through these 4 very quickly, which have not made the top 10, but they are going to get mentioned. The first one is the Mask of Mirrors series. So the first book is definitely like a big favourite of mine, but I don't feel as though I should be putting rereads on a favourites list. So this was a favourite from a previous year. I reread the first 2 books to get to the third book, which came out this year. The third book I wouldn't say is a favourite, like I think it was good, but it's not a favourite. But the enjoyment that I had rereading this series and my feelings for books 1 and 2, and I still enjoy book 3, but like this reread I thoroughly enjoyed. The Mask of Mirrors is a Venetian-inspired fantasy following our main character Ren, who is a con artist, as she tries to infiltrate the merchant houses and pretends to be them in order to set up a life for herself and steal their money. Although coincidentally the family that she picks to join are actually broke. A whole lot of drama ensues with lots of politics and an interesting magic system. So I really thoroughly recommend this series, but the third book unfortunately was not a favourite, so that's why it's only in this honorary mention. I did read the whole of the First Law series this year and I enjoyed it. It's not quite a favourite though, but I did really enjoy this. I think the second book might be my favourite in the series, just because I was enjoying where we were going with these very dark characters, the journey that we were on. So I did really enjoy this, but I don't think it's like it wasn't like a favourite of all time. Although I am getting the itch now to start the standalones, although I haven't yet. But I do want to continue on reading in this world. I just haven't yet. This is like a grimdark fantasy series. We've got a cast of characters that are all quite morally grey in a world where there are threats from all sides and the ruling parties are out for their own gain. A romance that I really enjoyed Emily Henry's Happy Place. I binged this in like a day. I couldn't put it down, and I feel as though that day my partner was having some surgery and it was a great distraction. Like I feel as though I just flew through this whilst I waited for him to get in and out of surgery, and so it was like a great palate cleanser for that day. So I want to really give it props for that. It's not my favourite Emily Henry, but I did really enjoy my time with this. And I do have like a should you read Emily Henry guide to Emily Henry, so I can link that as well. And we're following 2 characters that are broken up, but they haven't told their friends that they are, and their friends have invited them on a holiday and they don't realise that they're both going to be there, and they fake date in front of their friends to avoid telling them that they've actually broken up. So quite cringy, but and it jumps like back and forth in time from like the present day and to the past when they first started coming out. So I found this really fun. It was really fun. And then I did start the Blood Grey series by Bella Roth. So I've read the first 2 books. I've been very delayed reading the third one, just hasn't happened yet. But I did really enjoy this first book, Blood Mercy, and it's a political fantasy romance series with vampires following Leo and Cassia. Leo is from a vampiric like people, but they're like the Cullens and they just want to do good, it seems. And then Cassia is the bastard daughter of the king, and they meet at a summit where the two countries or two peoples are trying to form an alliance. It's quite slow moving, but I really enjoyed it, and why there's like built to in the end, like it was quite a climactic ending, which I really enjoyed, and I do just need to continue on with the series. Okay, so those are my quick honorary mentions, and now we will get into the top 10. Okay, and I believe these are roughly in order, working my way up to the number 1. So if you have guesses for the number 1, do put them below. But yeah, we are working our way up to it. You know, some things might move around in this order a little bit, but this is the order as of today. So in the 10th position, I have A Day of Fallen Night by Samantha Shannon. This is the prequel to The Priory of the Orange Tree. I really enjoy Samantha Shannon's world building. Her world building and her characters, and the way that she sort of crafts this whole world. It makes it feel quite, not believable, because obviously it's a fantasy world, so it's not believable, but I think she really thinks out her worlds. And in this, it's a multi-perspective fantasy story where we're set in this world with an evil force of dragons. We are seeing the different peoples and the different religions that they have. We follow people in the east of the world, which have, one set of beliefs that they follow, and the people there and the political situation over there. And then we also follow people in the west and the politics, the queendoms that are there, as well as in the priory. There's lots of different twists and turns as we follow these people when the threat of dragons is rising and they're trying to protect the people and the world. So I think it was a really well sort of crafted story. I really enjoy the magic system, the world building. So if you enjoy those aspects, as well as characters that are flawed, but you can start rooting for them as well, and you're trying to understand, you can understand their motives and understand who they are as people, like they feel very fleshed out. I would recommend this. Going from a very large book to a very small book, I also thoroughly enjoyed Thornhedge by T. Kingfisher. I've read a couple of T. Kingfishers, and this one so far has been my favourite. It is also the shortest, I think. So this is a fairy tale reimagining. It's not a retelling, reimagining. And we're following our character Toadling, who has fairy type powers, and she is guarding this tower in the same vein as Sleeping Beauty. And people are coming to try and wake Sleeping Beauty, and Toadling's purpose is to stop them and build up the thorns that block this tower from view and from the knowledge of people. And we come to understand that Toadling is not doing this for nefarious purposes, but actually she is trying to save the world from what is within the tower. And it was just so fairy tale-esque and magical. I enjoy fairy tale retellings or fairy tale reimaginings, or using an aspect of a fairy tale and taking that into its own story. I would have loved this to be longer. Like I really thoroughly enjoyed learning about Toadling and the things that she's going through, the sort of romantic subplot that goes through this, and I just flew through it. I just really enjoyed it. I really thoroughly enjoyed it. So if you enjoy a fairy tale, then I would recommend this. One of my latest reads, actually, sneaking in right at the end of December, but I think it deserves to be on here, is Exhalation by Ted Chiang. This is a collection of short stories, and this is why you don't film your best books until the end of the year, because sometimes the final book could sneak on there. And I found like every single story in here just hit. Like there wasn't a bad story. These are, I would describe them as like thought experiments, that they take an idea and then frame a narrative around it. But I feel as though Ted Chiang does a really good job at taking a theme, and it does explore the theme, but there is also a plot and there are also characters. I could get invested in what was going on. I don't think that I'm a very good like thematic reader. If someone said this book is built around themes, I typically haven't enjoyed those, because I need the plot and characters and movement through the story to keep me engaged, even though I think thematic books can be great for discussion. They are just not great for my enjoyment in the moment. But this, I think, combines all three of those elements. Some of them are more historical, some of them are futuristic, some of them you feel as though they could be near future and we could get to that point. Others are, I don't think we're ever going to quite get there, but they're very interesting ideas to explore. And so they're sort of, if you've enjoyed Black Mirror, I would say that you could enjoy some of these. If you've enjoyed Ken Liu's short fiction, then I think you would enjoy these, and vice versa. They make you think. even after you've finished reading the story. One of my biggest surprises that I read in 2023, and it became a favourite, it was a surprise and a favourite, is The Tyranny of Faith by Richard Swan, the second book in the the Empire of the Wolf series, the first book being The Justice of Kings. So I am so surprised by how much I enjoyed this, because I felt not mediocre about The Justice of Kings. I gave it like a 3.5 star. So yeah, mediocre, slightly above mediocre. And so my expectation for this weren't the highest. Like, I thought maybe I would enjoy it roughly the same amount, that I was interested in continuing and exploring the rest of the series after having read that one, but it wasn't a top priority, and I didn't realise how much I was going to enjoy it. But actually, this was a really dramatic improvement from book 1 to book 2 for me, and I really hope book 3 is the same as this level. Fingers crossed. The Justice of Kings, we are following our main characters, Helena, who is the assistant to Conrad von Volt, who is a justice. It is told in the perspective of Helena, and it is her reflecting on her life as an old woman and narrating her life and the travels that she got up to with Conrad von Volt. And as a justice, he goes around to different parts of the empire, meting out justice and ensuring that communities are behaving, or there aren't any misbehaving elements in the societies. So we are following them as they are investigating a murder. The first book, I'd say, is quite insular, whereas the second book we really expand and we see different parts of the world, and the politics and the wider plot get a lot bigger, which is what I really wanted from this, and it definitely delivered. Yeah, I enjoyed the way where this book, we explore more of the necromancy side of things and the magic system. And I think Helena not improved. I think in the first one, she's quite young. And so some of her actions are quite juvenile, whereas in this one, obviously she has aged and she is reflecting on this as an older woman. I enjoyed her perspective more. I was thoroughly surprised by how much I enjoyed this. I would say if you had a similar experience as me with book 1, then I would recommend continuing, as this one really hit the landing and really, really worked for me. And I think it was quite quick, like relatively straight away when I got into this, that I was enjoying this one more. I would really recommend this series. And I'm looking forward to reading the conclusion in a couple of weeks. I think it comes out soon, in February. Okay, this one, it does feel a little bit weird putting it on here because I read the majority of it in December 2022, but I finished it January 2023. I obviously didn't put it in my best books of 2022, but also I don't know if it quite fits in here, but I feel as though it has to be mentioned somewhere. It has to go somewhere, even though most of it was read the previous year. And that is Oathbringer by Brandon Sanderson, the third book in the Stormlight archive. I haven't read Rhythm of War yet. I know. I'll get there. It's going to have to be this year so that I'm ready for the 5th one, but I did finish this in January. This took me a long time to read, but it is worth it. I have thoroughly loved and really thoroughly enjoyed my time in the Cosmere and reading this series and being with these characters. I think they are so fleshed out and so well developed. This is an epic fantasy story, and it's Brandon Sanderson's sort of what's it called, chef d'oeuvre. They're like his big masterpiece. I do have reading vlogs of this series which I can link, so reading all 3 of them, each individual videos. So there I do go into all my full thoughts and theories and spoilers. Yeah, I am definitely excited to read Rhythm of War. It's just not happened yet, but I did enjoy this one. I did definitely enjoy this one, so here it is. Speaking of Brandon Sanderson though, and one that I read in the middle of the year is Tress of the Emerald Sea. This is a standalone in the Cosmere, and this was so cute. It was cozy and cute. We're following our main character Tress, who goes off on an adventure to save her love. I think the magic system in this is really, really interesting, with these like the ocean of spores, as she tries to seek out this sorceress and the adventures that she goes on. It felt very cozy and like she was going off on an adventure and we were going off with her. I found this really, really fun and engaging to read, and very different to Brandon Sanderson's other works, that it was a lot less serious, I would say. I think it's a different writing style that he was trying out, and I really enjoyed this. I found it very, very engaging. I liked our characters and exploring them and what they were going through. It was quite like romantic as well. So it was just very different to some of his other works that I have read. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. And I think the pacing was done well, and the climax where we got to in the end. And so yeah, I would recommend this one. And I think it is roughly a good starting point. There is like a little spoiler for the Mistborn series, but if you haven't read any of the Mistborn series, you probably wouldn't notice it. Maybe if you're in the middle of the Mistborn series, then finish it before you start this, but I roughly think you can probably just dive into this one. It was a lot of fun. One that was a little bit darker in tone is The Final Strife by Zara El Arifi. This is the start of a fantasy trilogy, and it is set in this world where there are tiers or hierarchies of people. So you have the red bloods, which rule, they have access to magic. You have the blue bloods, which are drifters, and they sort of do menial tasks. They're generally looked down upon. And you have the ghost bloods, who are very much looked down upon completely. They are the dregs of society. They tried to have an uprising a few hundred years ago, and since then every ghost blood is punished for that. So their tongues are cut out and their hands are cut off. So quite brutal as a society. And the book starts and we know that there has been a switch. So 12 of the red-blooded children have been switched for blue bloods, and then they are raised apart and the aim is that these red bloods that are raised as blue bloods would rise up and overthrow the system. And there are these sets of trials that are happening to determine the next rulers. I found the politics and the magic system in this really, really interesting, sort of the world building and the lore that we get. I also found our characters in this really dynamic and interesting to read from. I wouldn't say they're the most likable. I think they're all quite flawed and somewhat annoying at times, but that makes them even more real and relatable, that you can see some of the aspects of your personality that you don't like in them, which is a good thing and a bad thing maybe. But I found the pacing of this really well done. I do enjoy reading about trials, and I do find that trials do drive the plot forward, because you're always wanting to know how our characters are going to get out of that trial based scenario. And I think it was the lore and the world building in this that also really compelled me to keep going through it. So very interested to continue on with this series in 2024, because I have only read the first book so far. I have the sequel to read, and the third and final book comes out later on in 2024. So hopefully everything else is as good as this first book and sticks the landing. I'm also amazed by how much was crammed into this many pages. I think the amount of lore and history and backstory that we get on this world is so well done in this many pages. And then my favourite romance of 2024 was Part of Your World by Abby Jimenez. I do have a short sort of vloggy short thing where I read this book. I became obsessed with it. I read it in 24 hours, just couldn't put it down. I read some of it physically, I listened to the audiobook, and it was just so fun. It was so fun to read this one. We are following two characters, Alexis and Daniel. Alexis is a highbrow doctor and comes from quite a wealthy family who are all doctors. And then Daniel is a village carpenter who owns a Airbnb. And they cross paths when Alexis' car breaks down in his small village town, and she is stranded there temporarily whilst her car gets checked. It's that very cute, that meet cute that shouldn't work, but it does, between our two characters, how their lives intertwine despite them originally thinking that they don't have anything in common, but they really do. And it was seeing their sort of romance unfold as the story went on. I really enjoyed reading about these characters and the troubles they're going through in terms of their work and their work-life balance, the struggles that they are facing, and the friendship groups and the town that they are in. I felt as though the town had a personality of its own. There were comedic moments throughout. So I think the way that Abby Jimenez combined comedic moments, touching moments, sad moments, romantic moments, how all of those moments were intertwined together, I think was really well done. The pacing of this, I flew through it. I couldn't put it down. I was really rooting for their romance. It felt believable, and I felt as though these two people would be together forever. That's one of my determining factors on if I like a romance, is if I believe that the characters will stay together after the end of the book. Because sometimes I've definitely read them and I'm like, these people are going to break up in a month's time. There is no romance here. Whereas in here, I really felt as though the romance was going to last. So I would definitely recommend this one if you enjoy contemporary romance. Right, we're into the final two. I had a little obsession in June for the Crowns of Neaxis series by Carissa Broadbent. This is a fantasy romance series which I think combines the perfect amount of fantasy and romance, and it does it so well. And I was obsessed. I literally binged. I just kept going. I bought this book because I was like, I think I'm gonna like it. I really do think I'm gonna like this book. I was like, Abby, it's not on your TBR. I was like, Abby, ignore the TBR. You're gonna read the book. So I read this book, and then I had to go and buy the novella and the sequel, and I just read the whole thing in like June. I just read all those 3 books, just like back to back to back. So this stands in for the series, and I was obsessed. I was so obsessed with this series. This has trials in it again, so I do like a trial. Following our 2 main characters, Araya and Rain. Araya is the human daughter of the vampire king, so she has been adopted by him, and she is trying to survive in this world of vampires where humans are just blood bags, really. And she has entered into these trials where the winner can ask for a boon from the goddess. So her aim is that she will ask for to become a vampire, because humans can become vampires. And in these trials, she meets our love interest, Rain. There's a really interesting like political system in this with different types of vampires, which I found really interesting. I really liked our characters. I think they're very fleshed out. They feel very real, including the side characters as well. I was rooting for the romance. I found that the trials were done really well, that they were brutal. They were very, very brutal, these trials. Talking about this makes me want to reread this. I really thoroughly love this. I feel as though the pacing of this was done really well. The twists and turns throughout it, like the ending, I was like, I need the second book. Good thing I have it. And I do think the second book as well managed to maintain the angst in the relationship, as well as like the fantasy drama and political ramifications of this book. So I do think that was done really well. I think for me, I enjoy when there is a heavier lean on the fantasy elements compared to the romantic elements in my fantasy romance, that I get a little bit frustrated and bored when everything is too lovey-dovey in sequels. I want a really slow burn. The angst needs to be maintained, and I think that was done really well between this in this series. I'm also really happy that this is a duology, that it's a 6-book series in this world, but it's made up of 3 duologies, so we're going to follow different characters in the next books, which have not been released yet. That means that I got a really satisfying romantic pairing in this duology, but I know that there's a lot more in this world that's going to be coming out. So I would really recommend this if you enjoy fantasy romance. And then my favourite book of 2023. I read it in January at the beginning of the year, and I read it in December at the end of the year. And that is Emily Wilde's Encyclopedia of Fairies. This is one of the first books that I read in 2023, and it stuck with me through the whole of the year. I didn't think I realised at the time that it was going to be my favourite book of the year, but it stuck with me. And when I reread it in December, I continued to love this book and continued to love these characters. And so here it is. It stood the test of time. I don't think this has traditionally been one of my like favourite subgenres of fantasy either, that I typically lean more on the darker side of things, whereas this is more on the cosy side. So it's a surprise entry, one that wasn't really like on my radar, but I'm really happy about it. And I have read the sequel as well, which also was really good, but I'm going to stick with putting the first book in here. In this, we're following a main character, Emily Wilde, who is a professor of fairies, and she is writing her encyclopedia of the fairies in the world. It's set in like the 1900s, and she has gone to these remote Nordic islands to investigate the fairies there, and she is followed by her academic rival, Wendell Bambleby. And we follow her as she interacts with the village folk there, as well as the fairy folk, and the romantic tensions between her and Wendell, as well as the fairies that she's investigating there. It has a very cozy atmosphere, but I feel as though it does have stakes, that it's not cozy with no stakes. I feel as though we definitely do have some rising tension and drama as we get towards the end of the book, and I really thoroughly enjoyed this. I was so hooked reading this book. It was one of those books where I just couldn't put it down. Like, I just binged so much of this book in one go that I was obsessed. So I would really recommend this if you haven't started this series. I could just have more and more books in this world with these characters. Love this. There we go. There are my top 10 plus a couple of honorary mentions from 2023. Hopefully I might have persuaded you to read some of these. If you haven't read them already, please let me know what your favourite books of 2023 were and any that you would recommend to me. And thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in my future videos. Bye!